Good morning and welcome to Letter to Philippi Live. We are just getting started. We're streaming now on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and on on LinkedIn Live, which is our newest streaming service. And we're getting our Instagram streams going, and we'll soon be with you here on Letter to Philippi Live. Always have trouble with my internet connection with. So good morning, everyone. Actually, good afternoon because it is noon here in Los Angeles. So we are live on our letter to Philippi, and then we will get live on my personal personal page. Okay, we are now live on Instagram. So welcome to Letter to Philippi Live, our daily broadcast looking at Paul's letter to the Philippians, a verse by verse study through Paul's letter to Philippi, the letter to the Philippians, coming to you from Letter to Philippi, a new Messianic Jewish theological teaching organization. And we'll get our welcome to Letter to Philippi Live, a new Messianic Jewish theological teaching organization. Letter to Philippi is the first initiative of Letter to Philippi, and we'll be going verse by verse through Paul's letter to the Philippians. Today we'll be looking at Philippians chapter 1, verse 9 in our ongoing study, which comes to you at Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Phoenix time, 2 p.m. Chicago time, 3 p.m. Winter Park time, and 10 p.m. Jerusalem time, and 10 p.m. Johannesburg time for those in South Africa watching. And we'll be looking today at Philippians chapter 1, verse 9, and we'll have a word of prayer, and then we'll get into our study for today. O Lord, we thank you for this day. O Lord, you are good. You are faithful. You are a God that we have our trust in because of your faithfulness. We are faithful to you in return. We thank you for your love. We thank you for these words we have from your holy servant Paul, that he gave the people of Philippi that we can apply to our lives today, become more and more and more in the Messiah, and help us to become like Yeshua, who is our model and who is our Messiah and Redeemer. And in his holy name, the name above all names, we pray. Amen. So, good afternoon. This is Letter to Philippi live, initiative of Letter to Philippi.org. And we are a new Messianic Jewish theological teaching organization. And if you have any questions about Letter to Philippi, go to lettertophilippi.org, one L, two P's in Philippi. There you can ask any questions you have about our work. You can leave prayer requests when we're praying for you. You can make a contribution to our work on our giving link. You can purchase our Messianic Jewish commentary on Philippians, which is the basis for this class. We also have our statement of faith, what we believe as Messianic Jews, what we hold to here at Letter to Philippi, and what we seek to present and to build a 21st century Messianic Judaism, Messianic Jewish theology focused on living Jewish life in the light of Yeshua the Messiah, and as followers of Yeshua the Messiah, living as faithful Jews within the context of faith in Yeshua as the Messiah. And that's what we're looking to present here at Letter to Philippi, a Messianic Jewish theology focused on living Jewish life within the context of following the Messiah of Israel, Yeshua, our righteous Messiah. And if you have any more, as I said, if any questions, you want to watch past class videos, just go to lettertophilippi.org. And if you also can watch our live streams on our live stream link there, if you're not on Facebook or Instagram, any of the social media sites, you can just go to lettertophilippi.org and click on our live stream link and to watch this class live each day on our stream. So we'll be looking at Philippians chapter 1, verse 9 today, and I'll put that up on the screen for us to read. And we read, "And this is my prayer, that your love may more and more overflow in fullness of knowledge and depth of discernment." Let me read that again. "And this is my prayer, that your love may more and more overflow in fullness of knowledge and depth of discernment." So we will, I need to find my notes. This is not good. My notes, I can find my notes. So here we'll be looking at Paul as he's continuing to speak about his love for the people in Philippi, about how much they mean to him as co-workers with him in the work of making the Messiah known. And Paul here will be sharing with them about this deep love that he has for them, and continuing on and in his introductory words to the people in Philippi. So we will. So as we read here in this verse, and this he says, "And this is my prayer, that your love may more and more overflow in fullness of knowledge and depth of discernment." Paul here is calling the Philippians to grow deeper in their love for one another and love of God and his Messiah, that they will grow in discernment and knowledge of truth, as they will need to stand against the false teaching from within and without the community. So Paul here has been speaking to them in these opening verses about his deep love for them, his love for the community in Philippi. As we saw in verse 3, he says, "Whenever I think of you, I thank God." Whenever they came to his mind, he thanked God for them because of their deep connection, their working together to make the Messiah known, and their faithfulness to the message about Yeshua that Paul gave them. That from the very first believer in Philippi, Lydia, who heard the message of Yeshua, embraced it, and she and her whole household became followers of Yeshua. Paul acknowledges his deep love for them and thankfulness to God for them because they heard the message of the Messiah and put it into action. They heard the message, they believed the message, and then they lived the message of the Messiah by making Messiah known in Philippi and throughout Macedonia. Lydia even in her home establishing the first Messianic community, first Havara or house church in Philippi was in Lydia's house, that she heard the message of the Messiah, accepted the message of the Messiah, and then facilitated the growth of the Messianic unity by establishing the first Messianic community in her household. In her home was the very first Havara, the first home church of the in the Philippian community. So Paul here has been sharing, as I said, about his deep love for the Philippians. We saw that he spoke when we looked at verse 7, that he had them on his heart, that they were so meaningful to him. They meant so much to him that he actually could say they were engraved on his heart. Whenever that his very heart was for them. And we saw yesterday that he shared with them that the love that he has for them comes directly from the Messiah Yeshua, that he reflected the very love for Yeshua onto the Philippians. That his love for them was more than just his own love for them. It was the very love of the Messiah Yeshua, the greatest giver of love, the greatest example of love, Messiah Yeshua. The Paul says, "Not only do I love you deeply, what that I can as a human being, but I share with you because of my deep connection to Yeshua. I can share with you the deep love that Yeshua has for you." So Paul has been sharing in these first 8 verses his own deep love for the Philippians and how it was coming from the Messiah of Israel, from Yeshua, our righteous Messiah. And now he moves on for sharing for them to understand that they need to have that same level of love for one another in the community of Philippi, in the congregation of Philippi, in the Messianic community in Philippi. They too need to have that level of love that Messiah-like love for one another, for each one in the community to grow together to become more and more and more like the Messiah. And the need for this deep love that he says your love may more and more overflow in fullness of knowledge and depth of discernment. The Paul calls them to overflow with this love for one another, this love for all those in the community, so that they can have the fullness of knowledge and depth of discernment, that they can love each other so much, love the people in the community, love those in their own Messianic community, have the love that Messiah has, so that they can grow together, become more and more like the Messiah, and in so they can grow in knowledge and depth of discernment. But Paul calls them overflow with wisdom and discernment, so they can stand against any distraction from the pagan world, including false teachers proclaiming or teaching what they said to be new truths outside the foundation that Paul had laid for them. So Paul here is calling them to have a deep love for God, a deep love for the Messiah, and deep love for one another in the community, so they can grow to have the fullness of knowledge and depth of discernment, so that they can stand in their new faith as redeemed Gentiles, and there were some Messianic Jews among those in Philippi. As we said, the majority of the populace would have been from non-Jewish backgrounds. So he's calling people to live in their new life of the Messiah and to have the depth of knowledge, the depth of discernment, so they can stand firmly in their new faith in Yeshua, as they've come, many of them from pagan backgrounds, from backgrounds of worshiping the gods of Greece and Rome, the mystery cults, the worshiping of demons himself, as we see with those where there was in the in Acts 16 with the slave girl that had the demonic spirit, the python spirit that spoke from her. There were those who were even worshiping demons in directly in Philippi, though in worshiping the idols, they were worshiping demonic forces. So Paul calls the people in Philippi in their new life in the Messiah for them to stand and to have the knowledge and discernment that is necessary for them to stand against the pagan world that they have come out of, to stand up against false teachers who will see that false teachers will be coming, that Paul will be warning against false teachers who will be seeking to draw the people in Philippi away from the clear message of the Messiah, the clear good news of the Messiah, to go away from the pure message of the Messiah, to add to their faith in Messiah with different practices, or as we see with even being distracted into a syncretic adding of false teachings, false religions to their new Yeshua faith. As we said, in Philippi was known for the mixing of religions, which was called syncretism, that people would take something from, one, they would worship one of the Greek gods and also participate in the worship of one of the Roman gods, or they would be part of the mystery cults and also be involved with the worshipers of the Python spirit. So there would also be there was this tendency in Philippi to mix different religious aspects together. So Paul is concerned the people in Philippi will not fall into that, and calls them not to add any of these false teachings or pagan traditions of their past into their new Yeshua faith, as now followers of the God of Israel, as followers of the Messiah of Israel, grounded in the scriptures of Israel, that they will not add any of the false teachings to their pure faith that Paul has given to them, the message of the apostles, the true gospel of Yeshua, the true good news of the Messiah, and not add any of the teachings, false teachings from the pagan world. So Paul calls for them to have this wisdom and discernment, so they can stand against any distractions from their pagan world, from their lifestyle they come from their traditions that they'd grown up in the pagan world. And also, as we'll see later in the book, later in this letter, that Paul will be warning about false teachers seeking to draw them away from the pure faith in the Messiah. So Paul calls them to have that love for one another, the love for God, love for the Messiah, so that they'll build themselves up in the knowledge and depth of discernment, the knowledge of the truth, the knowledge of the pure message of Yeshua, our righteous Messiah. Rather than focusing on health or financial gain, as was common in pagan prayers, Paul demonstrated that this prayer for the Philippians is for them to grow in their knowledge of God and their daily walks serving Him. So, in many pagan prayers, there was this call, as he says, "This is my prayer, that your love may more and more overflow in fullness of knowledge and depth of truth of discernment." So, rather than focusing on health or financial gain, is his prayer for them that he would pray for them to have financial gain, to have wealth and health in this world. Paul's prayer for them here is for them to have discernment and knowledge of the truth and be able to stand and grow in their knowledge of God, their knowledge of the Messiah, the knowledge of the scriptures of Israel, so they can stand against any false teaching and to stand firmly in their faith. And in so to grow and become more and more and more in the Messiah. So Paul's prayer for them here is focused on their becoming more and more in the Messiah, so they can stand against any false teaching, to stand firmly in their new faith as followers of the one God of Israel, as ones who devoted themselves to the Messiah of Israel. And Paul here is calling the people of Philippi and us reading these words nearly 2,000 years later, that his prayer for us is that our love may more and more overflow in the fullness of knowledge and depth of discernment, that our love for God, our love for one another in our Messianic community will grow and grow. And that in growing in our love for one another, we will grow in our knowledge and our depth of discernment of what is the true good news of the Messiah, what is the scriptures of Israel telling us, and what it is to follow the Messiah purely and to walk in his ways and to stand on the pure path of faith, the pure path following the Messiah of Israel, devoted to him who is our Redeemer, and to be able to stand against the distractions of our world and the false teachings of our world, as the people in Philippi lived within a world of pagan religions and false teachings and the worship of demons. We too live today in a dark world, and we are to stand as a light within this dark world, this world that is turning its back on the God of Israel, and to live as lights within the darkness and to live faithful to the one God of Israel and his Messiah. So for the people in Philippi, for us, Paul is sharing this prayer that we will love God and seek him and to become more like our Messiah, love our fellow believers, love those within our Messianic communities, and grow in the knowledge of the true word of God, the faithful path that has been given to us by the apostles, and to have the depth of discernment to know what is true, what is false, and to live out that life, to live as lights in a dark world, and to live as true Talmudim and Yeshua, ones who are seeking to become more and more and more like our Master each day. And that's what Paul has called the people of Philippians here in this verse. And for us reading this now nearly 2,000 years later, that is his call for us to abound in love for God, abound in love for those in our Messianic communities, and abound in seeking out the knowledge of God and to seeking to build discernment to know what is true, what is false, and to live for what is true and righteous and holy, and to live as strangers in this world, as those who are counter to our culture that has turned us back on God, has turned us back on righteousness, turned us back on holiness, to be ones seeking righteousness and holiness and purity in our lives, so we can live as true lights in a dark world. And that's Paul's teaching for the people of Philippi, and for us today, for us as Talmudim of Yeshua, to whether Jew or Gentile, to live as lights in a dark world, as ones following the example of our Messiah and seeking to become more and more and more and more in the Messiah each day. That is our calling, and that is Paul's prayer for us, to become more and more and more like Yeshua, our righteous Messiah. So that will conclude our time of study for today as we looked at Philippians chapter 1, verse 9, and Paul's prayer for the Philippians, for them to grow in their knowledge and depth of discernment to stand as lights in a dark world and to stand against all those distractions away from the pure message of the Messiah and to live as lights in a dark world. And he compels this onto us as we read these words nearly 2,000 years later. So that will conclude our time for today here on Letter to Philippi live. The initiative of letter to Philippi.org. Lettertophilippi.org is our website address. You can go to lettertophilippi.org, 1L, 2Ps, and you can watch past class videos. We'll be adding videos over the time as we have new ones. You can leave a prayer request. You can ask any questions. We have a contact form. You can make a much needed contribution or work on a giving link, either a one-time or an ongoing contribution. We are a nonprofit organization dependent on those who watch our classes, participate in our website, to share with us, to make a contribution, to make an investment in the future of Messianic Judaism through the work of Letter to Philippi. And we truly appreciate all those who support our work. You can read our mission statement and find out what we're all about, why we started Letter to Philippi, what we are about. You can read our statement of faith. You can going into what we believe as Messianic Jews, what our faith is about. And if you have any questions about that, we have a contact form there. If you can read our mission statement or our statement of faith, if you have any questions about what it is to be a Messianic Jew, a follower of Messiah, Yeshua, we'll be happy to answer those questions for you. So again, anything you want to know about Letter to Philippi, you can go to lettertophilippi.org, and that will be our time for today. Tomorrow we'll be looking at Philippians chapter 1, verse 10, which reads, so that you'll be able to determine what is best and thus be pure and without blame for the day of the Messiah. That will be tomorrow on Letter to Philippi Live at 12 p.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Phoenix Time, 2 p.m. Chicago Time, 10 p.m. Winter Park Time, 3 p.m. Winter Park Time, 10 p.m. Jerusalem Time, and 10 p.m. Johannesburg Time. And we will see you tomorrow here on Letter to Philippi Live. Thank you for watching. Shalom. And thank you for being with us. And tomorrow we will look at Philippians chapter 1, verse 10 in our daily Monday through Friday, verse by verse, one verse per day. So we have, as I said, there are 103 verses in Philippians. So we'll be going through this time through the book of Philippians over about 4 months. So we'll be going into summer by the time we conclude the final verse of the book. And this is our 5th time going through the book of Philippians, as we started on June 1st of 2021. So thank you for watching. Shalom, and we'll see you tomorrow as we look at Philippians 1, verse 10, and living pure lives without blame for the day of the Messiah, here in a Letter to Philippi. Shalom.